Hello and welcome to A Stitch in Time. Today is Wednesday, August 2nd, 2017, and this is episode 27. My name is Carol and I am known as Knits and Pearls on Ravelry. The show notes for this and every episode can be found on the blog at astitchintimepodcast.blogspot.ca, or you can also find them in the episode thread in the Ravelry group. And that can be found by searching A Stitch in Time Podcast under the Groups tab. Come by and join in the Agatha Christie Along, which is a knit along I am hosting in conjunction with reading my way through my Agatha Christie collection in order of publication. It's going to take me a long time, so I'm just going to run this knit along or crochet along indefinitely. All you have to do is knit or crochet any pattern that you can relate to Agatha Christie. So it might be a pattern that's specifically inspired by one of her characters or the titles of her books, or Agatha Christie herself. If you could find a way to tie it in, by all means do so. Up until now, I've just been running this as a casual knit along with no formal prizes, but I have decided to add a prize a month for this knit along, and what I'm going to do is just keep a running tab of all the completed projects, and at the end of each month I will draw a name. So you might have knit your project way back when this started in January or February, or it might be something that you just finished last week. So I did draw the very first winner, and that turned out to be Katie Beth. Her name is actually Sharon, and she knit the Ignis socks. She tied them into Agatha Christie by the colorway name was Hund, I think that's how you say it. I am not German, which means sheepdog. I think it's in German. And she tied it in by saying that Agatha Christie was a dog lover, and one of her short stories was entitled Next to a Dog. So see, it doesn't have to be anything specifically tied into Agatha Christie. If you can make it work for me. The main purpose really of this knit along is just to get to know each other, form some community, and of course show off our knitting, which is what it's all about. Congratulations, Sharon. You have won a pattern that's giftable on Ravelry up to the value of $10 US. So pick out a pattern and then get in touch with me, and I will gift that pattern to you. So again, congratulations. Today's episode is going to include a couple of completed projects. I also have several works in progress, a couple of which you haven't seen yet. Talk a little bit about what is up and coming, and then I'll talk about my week, which has been another kind of up and down week. Just seems like life is never boring around here. So let's start with the knitting. Oh, I hear the garbage truck. He's just pulling up across the street, so I hope you can't hear that. The windows are closed, so hopefully it's okay. So the first thing I have to show you today is my sugar maple shawl that I knit for the Grocery Girls Canada 150 Make-Along. It's called the Sugar Maple Shawl by Angela Roberge, and the yarn that I used is, this is what I've left over. It's called Kid Dazzle by Fleece Artist. There's the tag. Kid Dazzle, and as you can see, the colorway name is Red Maple. There's Fleece Artist. So I will be able to, or I did enter this for 4 points, which was, or I haven't done it yet, but I will. A Canadian designer, a design with a Canadian theme, a Canadian yarn, and then a yarn colorway, also with a Canadian theme. So I thought that was pretty good for one project. So here it is, enough about talking about it. Here it is, all finished and blocked. As I've mentioned before, the color is a little bit more pinky red than what shows up on camera, although I must say, watching the podcast recording back, last week, it actually seemed to show up on my computer screen as more true to life. So maybe you are seeing it rather accurately. When I'm recording, when I look in the iPad, it's a lot more red, bright red, as opposed to a deep sort of cherry red. But anyway, so it has this lovely, let's see if that'll help. There, that might. Has this leaf design in here. And then you continue with this eyelet lace section, and then you finish the border here. Does that help? There you go. Now that shows that off really well. So you finish with these leaves along the bottom. It's a great size. This is the kind of shawl that I will very easily be able to use as a scarf. I am not keeping this on. It's very warm today, but that gives you an idea of how it will look when it's worn. So yes, I'm very pleased. A couple of details about it. As I mentioned last podcast, the pattern does not, it specifies to begin the final edging section when you have about 60% of your yarn left. And if you look at the project notes, some people say that you actually only need about 40% of your yarn left. They also, the pattern also fails to mention that you need to finish this eyelet section. It's a 6-row repeat, but you have to work them in sets of 3 for the first row of this chart to work out. So I worked, pardon me, I worked 6 repeats of the eyelet section and was debating whether to try and work a 7th. But when I did the math, I thought I might be cutting it too close. And it's a good thing I didn't do it because I wouldn't have had enough yarn. In the end, I used up 117 grams of my 129 gram skein. And the border took 60 grams of that yarn. In other words, it took up about 51% of the total yarn I used for my pattern, for my shawl. So when I started my border, I had about 55% of my yarn left. So it was a good decision. I don't know, I guess it really partially depends on the weight of your yarn, how big your skein is, like as when I say the weight of your yarn, I mean how fine it is, how many meters you have per gram. I don't know, but I'm glad that it all worked out how it did, that I didn't have to do too much picking back. I did initially when I realized that the chart C was not going to work after I had worked 7 repeats of the pattern. But after that, everything fell into place. And so yes, very happy with this project. And I was worried that it has mohair content, and mohair and I don't always get along, but I've soaked it in wool wash and such, and just sitting with it here, it doesn't feel too bad. So I'm hopeful that I will be able to wear it as a scarf next to my skin come the winter. So there, that's all I have to say about that. My other finished project are my felted clogs. So here they are, all done and felted. Last week I showed you that I had finished one clog but had not felted it yet, and I had just begun the second. I am relatively happy with the felting. I'm very happy with how the felting looks here on the upper part. What I'm less pleased about is that there's still some stitches that show on the bottom, particularly here. I'm used to felting in a top-loading washing machine, but we had to replace our washing machine last fall, and we got a front loader. So it's a little bit different. I can't stop the cycle anytime I want to check the sizing or to take the slippers out and kind of stretch them into shape. And they get, I think, a little bit more beat up in a way with the spin, because normally I don't, when I would felt with the top loader, I wouldn't spin my slippers out. I would just have them in the first part of the wash cycle where it's swishing back and forth. And once they reached the size I wanted, I would take them out. This has to go through the spin. And I think that's partly what happens here, is maybe these are bent and don't get the agitation, and if it's a little bit more protected. Anyway, I will be putting suede soles on here anyway, so it shouldn't be too bad. Yeah, I can see in here too. See, they're not quite as felted as normally my slippers would be, but I think they'll be fine. I'm happy that I'm still able to achieve felting with my top loader, because it's a lot to ask for someone with a top loader to come over and throw them in, because they in a top loader they do leave a lot of lint behind and such. So anyway, yeah, I'm glad to have it. As I showed you last week, my old pair was definitely worn out, so I'll get the soles on these, and then these will be good to go. Oh, the yarn I used for that is Peyton's Classic Wool in bright red and light gray marl. So you can see the marl gives you these little bits of dark and light areas. And these remind me of sock monkeys. So nice and cheerful for the winter time. Okay, works in progress. Well, I won't bother showing you my Blind Venus socks. They are my plain vanilla socks that I use for car and travel knitting, and I haven't done anything on them since I saw you last. I debated whether to show you my Sprites Fen Shawl again by Helen Stewart. It is done by, the yarn is Fleece Artist, Saldana, in the Hemlock colorway. Those who watch regularly can probably recite that from memory. This is what the yarn looks like in the cake. And here's where I am. This is the second shawl in the Shawl Society 2 pattern collection. So, as you can see, I have a lot done, and there are 519 stitches on the needles by now. And I have been extending this last feather and fan section quite a bit from what was written in the pattern. I have completed 2 8-row repeats since I saw you last, and that means I have 2 more 8-row repeats to do, plus the final 8 rows of the shawl. So 24 more rows to go, plus the bind off. Just thinking, there's the feather and fan. You can see quite well there. I was knitting this the other night. Well, I was finding it hard to see, and my eyes were kind of bugging me, and I got to the end few stitches and the pattern wasn't working out. I had a few stitches too short. So I looked back over the last row of knitting, and probably about 3/4 of the way back I found where I'd made a mistake. So I just marked it with a locking stitch marker and went back to it yesterday to take it back and reknit it. So it's the pattern row, that's why I messed it up. It's only one pattern row for every 8 rows, but if you're going to mess up, it's going to be there. And so I did pick back stitch by stitch till I got to the place where I'd made a mistake, knit the whole row again, and when I got to the end I was 1 stitch short. And I tried to look back to see where I'd made a mistake, and as it turned out, it was at the very, very beginning. In order to make this I-cord edge, on your right side rows, you knit 1, slip 1, knit 1. And unbeknownst to me, with me not seeing well, the darker light, does that make sense? The poor light, I had inadvertently knit 1, slipped 2, then knit 1, and then started my pattern. So I had to take that back 519 stitches the entire way again, and then reknit it. So Very frustrating, that close to the end especially, but I'm back on track. I'm glad I fixed it. Maybe I could have fudged it, but maybe not. It might have shown up in the end, and I'd just rather do something right. So I'm hoping next time I show you that, it'll be done. I keep saying that, but it does seem to be going on forever. But you know, despite all that, I'm actually still really enjoying the knitting. Most of it's just knitting a row or purling a row, and then that one pattern row that kind of breaks things up. And I still just really enjoy watching the yarns knit up. I like how the colors play with each other, and I'm quite excited to see it all finished. Okay, fair warning here, spoiler alert, I am participating in the Very Busy Monkey August and September mystery knit-along. And Very Busy Monkey, or Stephanie Etting, I believe is her real name. She has this tradition every summer. She does a mystery knit-along, and she releases a pattern for a shawl and pattern for a pair of socks. And they are related to each other. They use the same stitch patterns. Last year I planned to participate and had bought the patterns beforehand, and it just didn't work out. But this year I'm in. So I am going to show you the shawl first. The clue was released Monday night. In the evening of July 31st. And so I began it yesterday and have actually finished clue 1. Now, remember last week I showed you this Madeline Tosh yarn that I had purchased for possibly using in my So Faded pullover, but the other 3 yarns together that I showed you last week are going to work out, and so I decided to use this for the shawl. So it's Madeline Tosh Merino Light, and this is the begonia leaf colorway. So again, look away if you don't want to be spoiled for clue 1. And there it is. Very, very interesting way of casting on, and a really interesting way of increasing for this shawl. So we're ending up with, that's not going to show up very well, your garter edge border, and then a center spine and a center or a edge panel of stockinette, and then you increase on either side of those 3 panels that go down the shawl. But I just think this part just looks so cool, the way the panel runs along so smoothly from the cast on. So, looking forward to next week and clue 2. This obviously didn't take very long, and it was a nice, easy beginning to the shawl. But I like the way the yarn's knitting up, and I think it's going to be really pretty. Nice color. It's pretty accurate there. Maybe a little darker. That's probably, there. That's probably pretty accurate there. And I am storing it in my Pegs Procrastinations bag. This is one of the sponsors, prize givers for the knit along, and also sponsor. And so if you knit with one of the sponsors' yarns or bags or stitch markers, etc., you get an extra entry for your projects. So I have done many Very Busy Monkey knit alongs, and they always live in this bag for that purpose. Tuck that back in. I have used this bag for other things too. It's a really nice size and really well made. Okay, so I'm also knitting the mystery socks. So again, if you don't want to be spoiled, look away. These I am knitting in Hazel Knits Entice. You can see this is a knotty skein, which actually just meant that it came with a very small portion. Actually, I've got it tucked over here. This much was separate from the main skein, so I'll just use this in my mitered square blanket. So really, you get a discount for it, and really I'll never use all of what I've got in this main skein anyway. But anyway, the hazelnuts, and the colorway is called Cirrus. And I'm going to be knitting 2 socks concurrently on this knit along, but so far I have just completed clue 1 on the first sock. And so, there you go. Also like the way this yarn's knitting up. I think it's nice and light, well suited for this pattern. So, yeah. I like this kind of knit along. You actually have till the end of September to knit it, so I've got lots of time. And the clues never seem to be so onerous that you can't complete one before the next clue is released a week later. At least that's usually how it is. Obviously, sometimes you can fall behind. But I'll do my best to keep up. Okay, so that's the end of the spoilers. What do I have up and coming? Well, it's August, so it's another month, so I want to knit another pair of socks for the Grocery Girls Sock Bash. My intention, I started thinking about different themes that I might do for August, and decided to, one of the things I explored and looked for patterns on was something related to hot weather. And I found a pair of socks, a pattern called Heat Wave, which I thought was perfect because we've begun August with a heat wave here. But I'm having trouble getting the pattern. It's available on Ravelry, and when I ordered it, I used my PayPal connected to my checking account, and I got a message, I've never seen this before, that says there'll be a delay between when you place your order and when the designer approves or accepts your payment. And even though the actual payments come out of my checking account, I haven't seen the pattern. And so I canceled that order today, that payment. And I tried again with connecting PayPal with my credit card. And I got the same message. So I have messaged the designer both on Ravelry and via email. So I'm hoping that it's something she sees and can help me with, because I do like the pattern. And the good thing is if I cancel it, if she hasn't accepted the payment, I can cancel it, and then the amount is credited to my PayPal account. So I won't be out any money, but it's just a little bit disappointing because I'm so used to buying a pattern on Ravelry and being able to download it instantly and start knitting with it. So the pattern name is Heatwave Socks, and it's by Sarah Kane. And Sarah Kane was one of the 2 sisters that used to be part of the Sassy Sheep podcast years ago. And she also had a yarn dyeing, I think it was her. One of them did yarn dyeing, and I actually have some Sassy Sheep yarn that I ordered years and years ago, but they don't do the podcast anymore. And she does appear to be active on Ravelry still, though, so I'm hopeful that everything will work out. So anyway, I went looking in my stash for, I thought, oranges or reds or yellows would be a good name. And I found this Alegria by Manos del Uruguay in this beautiful red. That's, again, more orangey red than it really is. Yeah, it's coming up kind of orangey. But I thought it was very fitting. The colorway is called Fuego, which means fire. And considering this year in British Columbia, this is a very appropriate colorway name. So, and the fires in BC are being aggravated by this recent heat wave. And so anyway, these seem perfect. I will use this yarn regardless. I might have to switch out the pattern. So we'll see. And the other thing that I have up and coming is tomorrow is the release of the 4th shawl in Helen Stewart's Shawl Society 2. It's a 2-color shawl. I saw today this very briefest little preview of it. I'll make my final decision on yarns once I see the whole shawl, but I am considering using these. I had showed these 2 yarns to you, thinking I might use them for the shawl number 3 that came out for Shawl Society about a month ago, along with a yellow skein, but I didn't really care for the shawl, the style of it for myself, but I'm still thinking about these yarns. And as I explained last time, although on my iPad here, and I don't know what it'll look like in the recording, this yarn is actually very close to this color. So they match very well, even if though they don't look like it in this particular shot. Yeah, it's very, like this darker color here, that's what this looks like. So stay posted. I will make my final decision. This is Hedgehog Fibers. It was an exclusive colorway for this Simply Sock Yarn company called Sand Castle. And then this is also for the Simply Sock Yarn company, their post yarn, and this is called Atlantis. So, and the kind of yarn is patina. So stay tuned. We'll see. So just flip the page on my show notes, and I have no what am I reading this week, because I actually haven't been reading anything. Just haven't been into reading. So I think I've maybe read a page in the latest Agatha Christie book that I'm reading, which is Murder in 3 Acts. But I don't think that, I guess I just included it in the podcast, but I don't think it really was worth mentioning. So yeah, my week. Thank you all for the happy anniversary wishes. My husband and I celebrated our 33rd anniversary last Friday, and we went out for dinner at our favorite, one of our favorite restaurants, a Greek restaurant here in town. It's about a mile from our house, so we often will walk down, and then we can have wine and not worry about driving home. So we like to take our time. Usually when you phone up for reservations, they'll ask if it's for a special occasion, and usually even if it is, we don't bother saying it is, because then they come around and they sing to you. But on the bright side of that, they bring you a piece of cake. So I kind of laughed at my husband because I said I'm debating whether or not we should tell them it's our anniversary, because I kind of might want dessert. So I left it up to him, and in the end he did tell them. So yes, we had to sit through the embarrassing singing part, but we did get to share like a hot brownie with ice cream, so it was worth it. Then Saturday and Sunday was the year-end ball tournament for my husband's slow pitch team, and I keep score, so I'm there also. It was quite a sunny, hot weekend, but it actually had the dugouts that we had were always kind of in the shade, luckily, and there was a nice breeze blowing most of the time, so it didn't end up being quite as hot as it, at least not for me, as it has in other years. So that was good. We had 3 really, really bad games, but had one good game that we lost by just a run. Went into the bottom of the 7th inning. That's what that's the maximum innings that we play. And went into the 7th inning, bottom of the 7th tied, and they did score a run. So even though we lost, it was a really good game, really fun. And then my husband's team won the most sportsmanlike team for the year. And that's something they've won a few times over the last few years, which means they're gracious losers and have a lot of fun no matter what the score is. So in a way, I think they're more proud of that than once upon a time when they were more competitive and up in the sort of top end of the league. So Saturday afternoon, we were sitting at the ballpark, actually, after our last game, and my sister realized that she had missed a phone call on her cell phone, and had a message from my cousin to say that Clinton, the town where my mom lives, had been put on evacuation order. Now, for those of you who've been watching, or for those of you who haven't been watching, British Columbia is having a very bad wildfire season this year, and the town where my mom lives had been put on evacuation alert about 2 weeks ago. And my mom had decided to come down to where myself and two of my sisters live, just to be safer, and she didn't want to wait for the order itself. So then that kind of put things in a bit of a tizzy, because my niece was supposed to get married up at our family cabin just outside of Clinton this coming Saturday. And at one point, when Clinton went on alert, my sister and my niece, the bride and groom and the family, had started to formulate Plan B, which is to hold it closer to home. And then as the fire activity in Clinton seemed to be dying down, they decided to go ahead with Plan A, which was to have it at the cabins. Well, this obviously put an end to Plan A. So they've reverted to Plan B. At the time that this happened, the property where our cabins are was neither under evacuation alert nor order. And so my sister and her husband went up the back way, which involves going over the mountain on a narrow, twisty, windy road. They went to the cabins and they picked up all the food and water and wine that they had taken up a couple of months ago in anticipation of the summer wedding. So I think they were feeling much better about having gotten all of that and not having to repurchase it for Plan B. And since then, since then, the fire has really grown. Been a lot of hot weather and high winds. Last week when I recorded on Thursday, I told you the total hectares for this fire were 65,000. It has now grown to almost 85,000. They're just having a really tough time. It's still only 30% contained, and it's been that way for several weeks now. They were trying to keep it south of one of the rivers to help use that as a fire guard, and it unfortunately jumped that river. And pardon me, as of yesterday. Oh, and then there was another area where they were doing a controlled burn. For those who may not know, one of the ways to combat wildfires is to burn an area outside of the fire perimeter under controlled circumstances, so that when the fire reaches that area, there's no more fuel left and the fire burns itself out. Unfortunately, sometimes these get out of control, and that's the case of one of these controlled burns, and it jumped the highway and is now going up the hill. And what happens to be a ways away, but on the other side of that hill, is our vacation property. So as of 5 o'clock yesterday, our vacation property has now been put on evacuation alert. There's nobody there, and there's nothing other than of sentimental value that would be damaged. I mean, we would lose our buildings, obviously, if it came to that, but it's not it isn't anybody's primary home. But that isn't the case for some people that live along that live in that area. They are primary residences, so we're really hopeful that crews can get a handle on this fire. The good news is that at least at the moment, the village of Clinton itself and the mill that's just north of there that employs a lot of the citizens, they still seem to be able to contain it from reaching those areas. So Let's hope. It's so tough for everybody. I'm going to insert, just to give you an idea, a friend of a friend of a friend on Facebook posted these pictures on Saturday as they were driving through Clinton, and I'm going to put them here. So that Shell station sign, my mom lives about 2 blocks from there. So that gives you an idea. And the ridge, mountain ridge that you see in those pictures, that's what they're trying to keep the fire from coming over that ridge. But it is definitely creeping up, and it sounds like they've been doing some controlled burns just behind it. So again, just hope they can keep a handle on that. We're starting to see the effects of the fires down here in the Fraser Valley. Yesterday and today have been very smoky. You can smell it in the air. Everything has a weird light to it. Even though it's technically a sunny day, it's not shining through, or it can hardly shine through the smoke. I'm going to insert a picture here to show you what it looked like out my back, out the back of my house at about 9 o'clock this morning. And then I'm going to put a picture here to show you what it usually looks like. This was taken last March, so we don't normally have that much snow in the mountains at this time, but this is the view I usually see. So that gives you an idea of just how much smoke is in the air. And so I am keeping the windows closed just to keep it from coming in the house as much as I can. But it's also, as I mentioned, we're also in the middle of a heat wave with temperatures expected to be in the mid-30s, that's Celsius, the next few days. And it's also, with the humidity, makes it feel like it's more like in the high 30s. So for you people on imperial measurements, you double and add 30. So if it's 35 degrees, we're looking at about 100 degrees Fahrenheit plus. So last night I got desperate and opened the windows in the evening just to let some fresh air through because the house gets very stuffy. So it's kind of you're choosing one over the other, comfort over smoky lungs. So we'll just, we'll manage. It's not the end of the world, and we are fortunate not to live in the fire zones. My mom is fine. She is staying with one of my sisters, and so she's safe, and she's pretty philosophical about things. There's not much she can do. She's taken the things out of her home for safekeeping or important papers, etc. She's done the most she can as far as that goes, and the rest is up to Mother Nature, and hopefully everything will be okay. On a positive note, because there is always something positive that you can find to appreciate. My niece is getting married this coming weekend, so the family will all be together, and that of course is a really, really great thing. My sister, who lives in Toronto, and her husband are flying in tomorrow afternoon, and they'll be staying with us, so that'll be good. And my mom, I'm not sure, she might come stay a few days too, just so she can be closer and have a more of a visit with my sister. We'll see. Due to not worth getting into the reasons behind it, but my niece's maid of honor was unable to serve as her maid of honor after all, and so she asked my daughter if she would stand up for her, so she was very excited to do so. And so I hemmed her dress yesterday, so that's all ready to go. She's just wearing the same dress that she'd planned to wear to the wedding anyway, but had to make extra special sure that it all got hemmed in time. So did that yesterday. It looks very nice. And yeah, we're just looking forward to this family occasion. So it's going to be held Saturday, which actually would have been my dad's birthday. So it's a special day for all of us. Probably a little bit bittersweet, but mostly sweet. And I'm very happy for my niece and her new husband-to-be. We really like him. So it remains to be seen whether I podcast or not. My sister, who's going to be staying with us, she and her husband are going to visit friends for a couple of days, due back next Wednesday, probably afternoon. So I'm going to try and podcast next Wednesday if everything works out. If not, it'll be the week after. So I guess, yeah, until then. Take care, enjoy your knitting, stay safe, stay cool if it's warm where you are, stay warm if it's cool where you are. So I think that's it. Let's check my notes real quick here. Yeah, I think that's it. So take care. Have a good week. Bye.